Here. Okay, I think we are ready to start. So, a very, very warm welcome to everyone to our second Livable Future meetup here in the, I would say, still short history of BRYCK. We are so happy that we have this meetup today with even this very interesting topic, the sustainability revolution in Web3. And yeah, because this time we won't do open questions here in the audience because we also have the people in front of the computers. So I would like to ask everyone here and everyone at home to open your browsers. So here, sitting here in the audience, you can use your smartphones, please. And you type in sly.do in the address field. And as soon as you did that, there should open a page. And then you see a field where you can enter a code. And in this code, again, you see the hashtag, like you see it here on the screen. And afterwards, you should be able then to type in livable future. And as soon as you did that, then opened the page where later on, I mean, you can also start now, there is no limitation, but best case is that later on, as soon as we started the discussion, then you let us know what questions you have, and I will make sure that in the end of the discussion we have some time to answer the questions from everyone here in the audience, but also from everyone at home. This is the idea, this is the plan for today. Did it work with Slido? Maybe you give me some feedback. I see some thumbs up. Oh, cool. Yeah, you're all fast. Great, prepared for tonight. I'm happy about that. So, that's it. Let's start with what is BRYCK? What is it all about? Is it a little bit about our entrepreneurial why? So what we are doing is we are starting, and we already started, a mission for the next generation of entrepreneurs. So what we really do here, and I hope that we also do it right now at this meetup, we inspire and we empower entrepreneurs and innovators who have set out to really build the solutions for a livable future. That's a very important mission that we have here together as a team, decided that this is what we are doing. And we are all aware of the fact that with this mission we are not alone on the world. Fortunately, there are already other accelerators, other innovation hubs, universities, and so on, also having this mission. And together with them, we want to follow this mission. So we want to amplify what is already successful, strengthen what is already there, and build on what is already there. And on the other hand, together with our partners, co-create what is still needed. And I will show you in a second what we are co-creating already. We understand ourselves as a platform, so we say it's our job to bring together all those that are needed to drive innovation, to build new solutions for a better world. And you see the players here on the screen where we think that they are all needed and they are all already part of our ecosystem. So for example, we already worked with 17 startups in our different programs. We have another 15 startups already welcomed in our Founder Lab. Today, we just partnered with investors for the Friendly Investor Day of a sprint program that we are running. Some of the startups or all of the startups who pitched today are here in the audience. But we are also setting up a huge cooperation with the University of Duisburg-Essen, already working on a bigger thing with this university, but we are in close cooperation with other universities already. And of course, there are also corporations we are partnering with. So this is the range of partners that we think we need to drive innovation, and it's our job to build this ecosystem forward and forward. And to make it very tangible, hoopala, for you. We're losing the picture, but yeah, here it's back. To make it very tangible for you guys, this is the 4 services that we are delivering while doing this ecosystem building. So it's about space that you see here, the 4 floors that are on top of us. So it's an inspiring co-working space. We do also do the startups program that I already mentioned. We do co-innovation with corporate partners, and of course it's a lot of networking, because bringing together those partners means we need to do networking, deliver events like we do it tonight here. And to make it even more concrete, so talking about the space here, it's the 4 floors and of the 2,200 2,500 square meters of state-of-the-art co-working space. And maybe the most important aspect is on the first floor. From my perspective as startup director, it's the Founder Lab. This is where we are welcoming early stage startups that apply for having office space for free, but also benefiting from our network. And then in the other floors, you find the innovation space where other innovative partners are already using the space and then also benefiting from the community. Talking about the startup programs, the core of our startup program is the 10-week sprint, and I brought this as an example here. So all the startups that pitched today are part of this 10-week sprint. We did it already 2 times in livable cities, so on this topic, and we're doing it in the future, again on the topic of hydrogen, in partnership with the H2 Hub, and we set up a partnership with the Universitätsmedizin Essen to also deliver another startup sprint in October. Unfortunately, the application phase is already over, but maybe if you are interested in the future, we will definitely do it next year again. And some words about this 10-week sprints program. So what is it all about? It's really about delivering a very tailor-made program, only 10 weeks long, focusing on startups that want to grow on the market, getting access to the industry on the one hand, and on the other hand also being able to close the next investment round. And we as BRYCK, we think it's very important to have strong partners. So the secret source of this startup sprint program is the couple of a mentor, which is a BRYCK colleague supporting on the business development side, and on the other hand it's an external industry partner that joins us for those 10 weeks and works very, very closely with those startups. So really tailor-made. The program looks different for every startup. This is the specialty about this program. Yeah, and we are happy that it will go on, and we will have another programs in October again. I told you also about the other aspects, which is our co-innovation process, achieving innovative projects together with corporates, but also startups. And then, of course, I told you about events and networkings to make this picture complete. So that's all about BRYCK, and I'm done with that. And now I have the pleasure to announce, sorry for that, our wonderful keynote speaker. So I told you already, we're so happy to have Josef Brunner with us, and we have to set up the technology in the back. But Josef Brunner, I don't know if you know it, he set up 4 companies in his life, and 2 of them are BRYCK and Relayer. And I just want to mention the exits because it's really impressive. So Josef sold BRYCK, which is an energy data management solution, to Cisco for 107 million euros on the one hand, and Relayer, which is an Internet of Things platform, for 300 million euros to Munich Re. So very impressive numbers. We're so happy that Josef can join us and tell us a little bit of how he did that, to share his entrepreneurial journey. But it doesn't stop there. He's a very interesting person, and besides being an entrepreneur, also being an author, having lots of interesting hobbies and some suggestions of how we can use the crisis for more entrepreneurship. And I think, Josef, you can't hear me, but you are already on the screen. You can hear me, wonderful. You are already on the screen, but I heard that it's hard that we interact, so I just have to hand over to you. So I told the audience already, I'm so happy that you are here, and I would say the stage is yours, and we're really looking forward to your keynote.
Thanks for having me. I can't see you, unfortunately, so I'm looking at myself, which is embarrassing, but hopefully you will enjoy the content for the next 20-25 minutes, and hopefully you will then judge that these were 20 or maybe 30 minutes well invested as we talk and discuss entrepreneurial opportunities in these incredibly crazy times that we live in. And Laura already kindly introduced me a little bit, so only 2 slides about my life. So who am I? I'm the son of a baker, the proud son of a baker, I have to say. I'm a high school dropout, founded 4 companies, as Laura just said. BRYCK We sold to Cisco, we sold to Munich Re, company before sold to an American company, and the company before to a Japanese company, which was quite an interesting experience in my mid-20s. I, decided that I'm going to be my largest investor on the journey ahead. So invested in all of my companies myself, and also build up a family office. I have 15 investments now in private equity and venture-backed firms. Something I enjoy a lot. Working with great founders, great entrepreneurs. Last year, did an IPO in Frankfurt. There was quite an experience as well. Something that taught me a lot. And some of these lessons that I was fortunate enough to experience, I documented in my book that Laura also referenced. It's called Follow the Pain. It's about the scars on my back, and believe me, I wouldn't show them to you now, but I have plenty of those scars on my back. And something that I'm very proud of as a high school dropout. I'm a lecturer at the Georgia Tech Institute in Atlanta. I teach entrepreneurship, something that is very close to my heart, and one of my hobbies, or the hobby, it's almost like my meditation, is I'm a big mountain lover. So last year I managed to hike up 50 different mountaintops, which was something that gave me a lot and where I take a lot of energy from. So how did my journey start? As I mentioned, I'm the son of a baker, and my dad is a great person, a great craftsman, but not necessarily a great businessman. And when there was competition, in the making, from supermarkets, and as they were selling bread, unfortunately, we were disrupted, to use nowadays terms, and we lost our bakery. And as we lived in our bakery, we, lost the house that we lived in, which was, pretty impactful. And then I pitched my dad a story that I would like to become an entrepreneur and start a cybersecurity company. I was 15 back then. When I then actually started, I was 16. And of course, I had nothing, no home, no money, no education, no future, but also no excuse. So what could I lose? So I asked my dad, I need 3,000, Deutschmark for the younger generation. That's the currency before the euro. And my dad said, that's not a problem. He walked over to a good friend of his who was an electrician, so a craftsman as well, borrowed 3,000 Deutschmark. I started when I was 16, and then when I was 18, I could buy my parents a new house, a house that they still live in, which is by far the most emotional, gift that was presented to me throughout my entrepreneurial journey. So that's about me. Enough about me. Let's talk about more exciting things. And one of the things that excites me a lot in these extremely challenging times is that I really wholeheartedly believe that there was never a better time to start a company or to invest. Despite all the news you're reading, I really fundamentally think that's true. Before we talk about the reason why, I would like to use the opportunity in just 2 slides to talk about what I think really matters. And what really matters from my perspective is the market, and only the market. When you want to start a business, when you want to invest in a business, forget all of the KPIs you hear from investors, or what's important or not important in terms of ARR or growth or market opportunity. What really matters is to understand what kind of external influences do you have that change a market. And we saw a lot of those in the past. We saw a lot of regulations around energy. We saw how the Federal Reserve, both in the countries but also in Europe, were used to change politics. We saw, supply chain problems, great supply chain problems, and all of these different influences, change a market, and they transform a market. So when you want to start a business, you have to understand, what is changing the market. How does the market look like after the transformation is done and completed? And what kind of new solutions will the market require once the transformation is completed? And then you basically forecast, the market transformation curve or evolution curve, so to speak, and also how long it will take you to bring that solution to market. And ideally, you bring that solution to market once the transformation of the market that you want to penetrate is done and completed. And that is the only thing that you should really, be worried about and focus on. And don't, think too much about technology. And Now, when I started my first company, and actually until the third company, I was still coding. So I love technology, and I totally understand that you can almost have a romantic relationship with technology, and sometimes it's all about the art of the possible and what great things you can do. And none of this really matters, right? Technology in itself has no value. It has no intrinsic value. If you focus too much on technology, it actually can complicate things. The only thing that really matters when you talk about technology is that the ability to use technology to transform a market. But never ever start with technology because it will mislead you, right? It always start with the market, the transformation, and then build the simplest solution to actually bring to market a solution that the market really needs. That's something that I think a lot of founders don't necessarily think that way, but for me that was always a very important ingredient to success. And what I said in the opening statement, I really fundamentally believe is true. Every market that is out there, every traditional market is changing. We have huge problems in our health system. The health system is so incredibly inefficient. There's so much money being wasted. We have the biggest transformation in any industrial part of our society through the energy transformation that will impact pretty much everything. Food is going to be looking extremely different tomorrow than it looks today. That in itself is a tremendously large market. Transportation, mobility, supply chain are just a few other examples. So there's not a single market out there that is not transforming entirely and holistically, which means that you basically have a shelf full of opportunities you can tackle. Choose one, focus on one, and then try to be as aggressive as you possibly can and tackle those solutions. And that is one of the reasons why I think that there's never been a better time for founders. And I'm a founder all my professional life, and what you see today in terms of the ingredients that you have and the market opportunities and how markets change, I really think there was never a better time. The question is, how can you win and how can you beat the incumbents? Because all of these markets, they already exist. They do change, but they exist. And if these markets exist, you have incumbents, large traditional companies already, serving those markets. So let's talk about, the main differences between incumbents and entrepreneurs or newcomers or challengers, and why entrepreneurs, are actually in a better position and why they will win. If you look into an incumbent, a traditional company that has legacy and that has history, innovation typically starts from within the company. They have a service, they have a product, they have a machine that they sell very successfully into the market. And then when they think about innovation, they think about incremental progress. They add technology to a machine, they change their offer slightly, they do what they already do a little bit better, a little bit more efficiently, or a little bit more effectively, but it's only incremental progress. And they do it very, very carefully because what they can't do is drastic changes, because by no means are they willing to endanger the very, very successful existing business and the very successful cash flow. That typically changes when these companies get into dire straits and have problems because of the market transformation, which is typically the time when it's too late. As a side note, there's a great book out there. I don't have the title in my head right now, but it gives you a great indication of, I think it's 50 companies that went from being a global market leader to bankruptcy in less than 18 months. And there's 50 examples of there. And there's one pattern, which is it starts with arrogance. Innovation is just, an attribute that you attach to something that already exists. And once you understand that you're in deep trouble, it's too late and you go out of business. That's, typically, what happens to incumbents, which, you could also call evolution. And that is the reason why, you and I exist, because we can build great companies that actually, take some of that market share. So what do entrepreneurs do differently? We don't have an existing business that we have to focus on, right? We have, no customers, no employees, no cash, no nothing. So that gives us incredible freedom. We can do whatever we want, and we can actually tailor the offering around the market and the customer. While an incumbent, says he does the same thing, but in reality, a solution is tailored around the existing business and not necessarily around what the market needs. And we entrepreneurs, we have, total freedom to do what's right for the customer and for the market. And even today, when it's getting a little bit rougher and tougher in the market, money is still a commodity, and it's available to everyone. It's available at scale, and it's incredibly cheap. There's so many different opportunities to get money, from venture capital. There's a lot of, now revenue-based financing models out there. There's so many different alternatives that you have to get a lot of money to actually bring your solution to market very successfully. And as we have no legacy, we can't have an inside out approach. We always have an outside in approach. We always look into the market. But the biggest advantage that we have is we're always broke, right? We constantly have to deal with the financial, near-death experience, and that financial near-death experience, makes us more frugal. We're more mean. We're more lean. But it also makes us stand up one more time, and that makes reality give up at some point. When reality hits you one more time and you fall down, you stand up again. At some point, reality will give up, right? The reality runs out of energy and choose to hit you. And that's why you win, because you stand up one more time. That resilience is something that existing businesses don't have. And to make this concrete, I stole a great example from the internet about innovation in the ice industry, and I thought that was actually a very easy example, but a very accurate example. In the around 1800, we had the first people who would move close to a lake. In an area where it was cold, the lake would freeze over winter, and then these ice harvesting people, would cut cubes of ice, would put them, on carriages, put horses in front of them, and then, they would transport these large ice cubes to the city, hoping that it wouldn't melt before it arrives in the city, to help, the rich people cool their stuff, and also help the first restaurants, cool their meat and their vegetables. Then, roughly 60 years later, there was an innovation enabled through technology where you had electricity. And with the electricity, you had ice factories in the city. And that entirely disrupted and killed, the ice harvesting businesses that were located around the lakes, because all they wanted to do is to understand, how can I get these ice cubes out of my lake more efficiently and better, where to get better or cheaper horses, how to get, better distribution. But they weren't willing to entirely disrupt and kill their business from the inside, leave the lake, move into the city, invest in a new technology that, would allow them to have these factories in the city. And so you had a new evolution of the market and a new, breed of companies having these factories. And then, technology advanced. Roughly 30 years later, you had, these factories became smaller and smaller and smaller. And then ultimately we had fridges, and those fridges could be deployed at home or in the restaurants. And of course, would entirely disrupt the factory business. And you see, even with something simple as ice cubes, you have an evolution. And none of these, incumbents in these different, three phases of the market evolution actually made it into the next phase. It's always the outsider who disrupts the industry. There's only a few very rare cases where the insider is actually, willing to entirely kill its own business to disrupt the market. Amazon is a great example of this, Cisco to some extent, Google as well, but not necessarily a German mindset. So that should give us incredible excitement, right? I mean, you have the biggest ever market transformation in any given market. In some of these markets, you actually have multiple external influences like policy making, ESG related topics, energy costs, supply chain challenges in some of these markets combined just, significantly accelerate the transformation. They scream for new solutions. So we should all be extremely excited. But what I see instead is, a lot of hesitation where I would actually like to see courage. I see, restraint where I would like everybody to just have drive, and get going. And when I talk, about this, with the enthusiasm that I have, and which is hopefully coming across, and I talk to other investors, they go like, no, I can't invest. I'm skeptical where the markets go. And I look into the public market and it's challenging. And I go like, it doesn't effing matter what the public market does, because the market transformation will require a new solution, and the market always gets what the market wants. So I would like to just see more people as enthusiastic as I am, but they're all worrying. They see no hope. They're all, really driven by fear, while they should have the excitement that I think some of us really feel and share. And instead of being, people that just are driven by fear and resistance, they should just start executing, just get going. So that in itself, is something that really drives me crazy, specifically as we have proof points by, some of the greatest investors of our time, like Warren Buffett, that it's always the time of crisis where big money is being made, right? So why would we waste that crisis? All we're seeing is that, valuations are, getting closer to reality. So valuations now actually have more to do with how you should really value the business, how much a company is really worth. We're seeing, unseen potential in the disruption in these markets. And for me personally, I walk the talk. I have invested more than I have ever invested before in the last 6 months, right? I deploy essentially all the capital that I have, in all of my, activities, because I fundamentally believe that these transformations will happen. And I think everybody that is, reluctant now and driven by fear is missing out on what I think is the greatest opportunity since post World War II. And I just don't understand how you can't invest now. So what is one of these investments, that I did in the last 2 years? I started a business in an incredibly boring arena, which is building management for commercial buildings. The company's name is Learned. It's in the UK. It's headquartered in the UK. We started it 2 years ago over wine. A lot of great things happen over wine. There's this, as an anecdote, there's this great saying, which I think is true. Wine is the source of and solution to many problems. But in this case, it was actually very, very positive. A former employee of mine came over, and I love to, invest in people that I've worked with. Came over. We had a few bottles of Sancerre, discussed, that the building management arena, will be disrupted brutally as energy prices will just go through the roof. And as we looked into, market transformation, we looked into the policy making. And while, I understand and support the energy transformation and the move to renewables, if you understand physics, you understand that, it just doesn't work. We just don't have enough energy, right? And that's not a political statement. It's just, physics. So we said, we will not stop that train, and we don't want to stop that train. But that will, open a great opportunity for a company that does demand response and peak shaving and grid management. And in order to do grid management, successfully, you have to have capacity under management. So Learned was born roughly 2 years ago. Didn't talk about this, publicly. We were not screaming out how much funds we were raising and how great we were. We just built, a very, very, interesting company that, had, technology that would, integrate with essentially every piece of information in a building in order to be able to manage the building differently and to save energy, but also be able to use the capacity to then do demand response and peak shaving, at scale in the market. We have invested 0 capital in that company. We just provided a £3 million loan into the company. And with that, we started to build the business. Here are the numbers. In 2019, we didn't exist. 2020, £50 million in revenues. 2021, 24 million, and being profitable from day one. And that just gives you an indication that if you are focusing on doing the right thing, on building a solution that actually, makes sense for the market, And if you do it in a way that is capital efficient, you can achieve incredible things, and you essentially need nothing but will and relentless execution. And with that, I would like, to remind you that there was never a better time. And if you have that drive, that spirit, if you want to change the world, go out there and do it. And with that, thank you very much for your time. And I hope that these were 20 minutes well invested. Thank you very much.
Wow, wonderful. I want to thank you, Josef, for delivering this keynote. I wanted to select my favorite quote, but there were so many valuable messages in that and so many learnings that I gave up on that. So thank you very much. Unfortunately, we can't have a little discussion right now. It would be really cool to ask you some questions, but next time you join us here in Essen, and then we will be very happy to also discuss with you all the bold messages and statements that you just made. Thank you, Josef. Have a very wonderful evening. Okay. Thanks. That's really cool. And we start right away with the next highlight, as I announced already. And this has to do with the two gentlemen here in the first row. And I want to start with a very well-known entrepreneur, but maybe he's even more proven as an ecosystem builder. Most of you might know him because, Sebastian, you are the founder of the Founders Foundation. And maybe you join me already here. You can choose one of the chairs and wonderful. And I just want to tell the story that after 5 years, I think, or 6 years, really building this strong startup builder and also startup meets corporate player in the middle of nowhere in Bielefeld, making this very successful, you decided to leave Bielefeld and to move to Lisbon to explore Web3. And he will share all the experience that he made with us. So I'm very happy that you are here live from Lisbon, by the way.
Thank you.
Not live from Lisbon, but now in Essen. Wonderful. And we have a second guest, which is Leonard, and you can already join me here, Leonard, because he is the interesting person here on the panel as well, because he is a founder in the Web3, so he really does it. And I'm happy that you can share all your experiences, how it is to be a founder in the Web3, and he made his way from Berlin. So this is also an applause. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, so, and I want to remind everyone that from now on, please try to be active on sly.do. I will monitor that a little bit, but first of all, we start here with our discussion on the stage. You have water. If you need something, just let me know. And Sebastian, I already know that I want to start with you because we had some discussions on this decision to really leave Bielefeld and go to Lisbon. And of course, the weather is wonderful. I do understand that, but I think there was also other reasons why you made this decision. And on top of that, you told me several times you're on your personal learning journey there, and that it would be great if you could share this journey a little bit with us so that we somehow start with the basics. So can you please explain us what is Web3 now really about? How is it connected to the blockchain technologies? And maybe, if I can also ask you this, maybe we also talk about NFTs. I mean, how is this connected to that? So let's start with the basics.
Okay,
Really easy.
I have to take notes to answer all the questions.
I will remind you, all good.
I think every entrepreneurial journey starts with a discovery phase. You need to look for problems, inspiration. You need some source of, you need to learn and see what you want to do next. And I think what you do here, creating an ecosystem, and what we have been doing in the close by region is so important. But I felt that, particularly for the next technology leap, I mean, you need to go where it's the bleeding edge, you know, where things are really evolving. And I think at some point, in 10 years, everything will be Web3 here, for sure. But anything, I mean, Lisbon is an amazing place where people from all over the world come. All to explore, build companies, build projects. As you have people from Asia, from Eastern Europe, from the Americans, all over Europe. It's a true European community. And it has an amazing infrastructure for companies to settle down and build and so forth. So that's why we moved over there in order to be part of this, help to create this ecosystem and actually build companies and create projects and obviously surf the wave of innovation. And of course, a lot of people go there surfing, and that's quite funny. But in fact, actually surf the wave of innovation, what's happening. So to now getting to Web3, Web3 is what comes after Web 2. I mean, some of you still remember when social media started, we called it suddenly Web 2.0. Now we claim that something like Web 3.0 is emerging. So what's different? The internet has been a network where you can distribute information, movies, photos, everything. But it was not made to transfer assets, money, for example, okay? You have PayPal, but essentially you just hit a button on some app, and then it goes through 7 different traditional channels, credit card companies, clearance companies, and then it somehow goes onto your Sparkasse bank account. So it's still old school. And the main revolution is that you can actually send money from one device to the other device, safe, using blockchain technology. That's why people call it crypto, because you'd use cryptographic technology in order to make it safe. And now you have the internet turned into this massive network where you can exchange values. And I think that's quite intriguing, and you can do many use cases. Of course, NFTs, you can register anything you would like onto the blockchain, and it's dedicated to you or to anybody who can claim ownership. I think that's also new, and you cannot change it. So it's very transparent that this NFT belongs to me. There's a big development in the NFT space that's very much related to art. So anything collectible, you can register anything. And some have value because it's collectible. It's only 1 out of 10, or it's a unique item that creates value. But there's NFT, and I'm sure you're going to talk about it, that have a utility. So an NFT can also be a token, a membership. You can have an NFT to certain restaurants. You can have an NFT for machines. I think Elio is going to talk about it. So I talked a lot, but to answer all of your questions, to get everyone involved, but to make it easy, it's in the very beginning, and it's a very funny thing. In 1994, Bill Gates was invited to some show. It's on the internet everywhere. And the guy asked him, so what is this internet all about? Do we need it? And Bill Gates says something like, you can basically watch your favorite sports show. And the moderator goes like, oh, does radio or television sound a bell? So he felt everything is there. We don't need it. And it's the same with Web3. We all think, do we actually need it? And it will slowly evolve, and in like 10 years, we all will know what we talk about it. So whenever there's new technologies emerging, it's weird, because we have everything. Why do we need it? And it's quite funny. So we're in the very beginning. It's highly technical. That's why nobody understands. And we're just about to see the first use cases instead of sending money around the world, which I find a beautiful use case, because it helps people who do not have a bank account. It's financially inclusive, and it's a beautiful thing. But we will see more use cases evolving.
So yeah, I find that important. It's not only about money and cryptocurrencies. So you can also use the blockchain for other aspects, and we're going to talk about that. So thank you for shedding some light on that. So maybe you can also let us know, what are now, Sebastian, in Lisbon, what are the big trends that you see in Web3? So make it a little bit more tangible also, that we come out of this technology-focused discussion.
I mean, there are various blockchains, and you can consider blockchains like Betriebssysteme, like operating systems. Like there's Microsoft, Windows, and there's iOS and Android, different operating systems. And right now, you see that there's constantly new operating systems evolving. Blockchain, we call them layer 1 blockchain. And each blockchain tries to create their own ecosystem. So right now, while we're here, there's the Nearcon the Near conference. Near is a blockchain, and they provide the infrastructure for people to build projects on it. And it's growing gigantically. I mean, the founder yesterday claimed he's going to grow to 1 billion users in 5 years. It's amazing how they increase their developer base. It's massive growth. We don't see it because Web3 is a parallel universe. So right now it's all about layers. There's the Polkadot layer where Leo is more involved, and there's the Ethereum Foundation. There's going to be the merge happening. I'm now trying not to get too into the details, but right now you have think about when the video recorder came, right? You have VHS and Video 2000. So now you have probably like 20 of them. They're all fighting, have better technologies, and it's quite interesting who's making the race. It's definitely going to be a multi-layer world, so you will have Microsoft and Apple and whatever. So that's what's going on right now. There's heavy investing activity. A lot of people are drawn into this because they feel something is happening. There's a lot of investing going on. In Lisbon, is crazy because everyone goes there. I mean, everyone. The founders of the leading chains, they all sit there. They live there. So it's like the Mark Zuckerbergs of the Web3. They're in Lisbon. So it's quite impressive.
Talking about the different layers, and you kind of answered my question already. You said they are kind of doing the race of which layer is going to be the one that is winning in the end, or because if we have this decentralized vision in our head of the blockchain, might it be several ones? So what do you think? How will it evolve?
It will definitely be multi-layer world. So. But it would be interesting to see what you say, because I think, and most people I know think it's a multi-layer world. It's think about it, telecommunication. You have E+, D1, D2, whatever, Vodafone. It's going to be like this a little bit. So it's a multi-change world. A few will not make it, I'm sure, but I think it will be, let's say, 6 that will actually make it because they have interesting use cases. And it will be a question how they all correspond, deal with each other. Because we as consumers, we don't care where projects are deployed. I mean, you don't look at how many Zündkerzenhersteller do you have in a car? I mean, I don't care, the car drives. But we are now fighting who builds the motor of the Web3 ecosystem.
And it's interesting what Josef said is that we shouldn't start with the technology, but here we have this tendency a little bit, which is also good because it's all this exploration that is needed.
It's the basis, because I agree what he said. It's impressive. I want to start a company right away after I heard this. But we're laying the foundation right now, and then it's going to be looking for use cases and problems. But right now it's putting up the basics, the foundation.
Wonderful. So, okay, talking about use cases, we definitely have to include Leonard to this discussion. So maybe you can start with really introducing your company to us, BRYCK, because it's so interesting, but it's hard for me to explain. So it's much better if you do that. And then I think we answer lots of questions that we just had also on the way.
Yeah, sounds great. Yeah, so at BRYCK, it's like when I get asked what are we actually building, it's not straightforward to answer, because in the end it is actually building an ecosystem, and our long-term vision is to build a machine economy, or how we like to call it, an economy of things. So we built a layer 1 blockchain network, which is basically that platform where we want to enable all kinds of machines to be registered with an identity. So it's kind of like a passport for machines, so that they exist in that ecosystem. And then all kinds of machines and humans can they can identify each other, and they can interact and transact with each other. So it's, what you said before, Sebastian, like they can pay each other. Like one example is a charging station and an electric vehicle. They can, of course, it works today already. There are lots of clearing houses and settlement platforms involved, so that cars can charge at a charging station. But on a Web3 network like BRYCK, that can happen peer-to-peer then. So they can identify each other, authenticate, and pay. And this is just one of the use cases that becomes possible. Another one would be, for example, a decentralized Uber, where you can like book rides and get a car without a company like Uber in between. So it all runs peer-to-peer. And one of the big problems today is that in Web 2, it's always about closed platforms, right? It's like one platform, and everything has to exist on one platform in order to see each other. So you have all those silos everywhere. But if you imagine a world, for example, because we're very active in mobility, that's kind of our beachhead market where we start, because vehicles are like the first autonomous machines driving around, and they get paid for driving someone, and then they have to pay to get electricity. Imagine an ecosystem where entire mobility is open and everyone has an identity, like every machine, every person, and they can all interact with each other directly, peer-to-peer, without having to register on all kinds of platforms. Because right now you need to register on all those platforms, right? All your data also belongs to those, or like is stored on those platforms. It's being monetized there. And like we see tremendous potential to create a much fairer future where also users can then monetize their data, where business, like the value distribution is much wider and not just in the hand of a few big companies. Because right now we have the winner takes it all, right? We know that Amazon Web Services, like a large part of the internet runs on it and so on. So you have those massive platforms that really get all the value, take all the value, but especially in Germany, we need a way to build digital business models without those big central tech platforms. And yeah, it's an extensive answer, but this is what we're working towards.
It was a great answer. Thank you very much. And I wanted to ask you because, like, I don't know how long it is ago, but years ago, I was already really looking at blockchain technology. And at that time, everyone said, so this is going to change the industry of energy and this is going to change the industry of mobility. And I was happy to hear that you are very active in mobility now, but it's years later and it's still just starting. So why do you think is this uptake of blockchain technology so slow also on this side?
Yeah, that's a wonderful question, because just today we announced that we're part of a consortium which is led by Bosch, backed by the European Union, where we have 3 years to actually create this decentralized infrastructure for mobility with many other great players like Airbus, Continental, and so on. So something is happening and the governments see the massive potential. But from our experience, the problem is that the traditional business models, they work right in creating a central platform. And we created with some companies these central platforms and they wanted to monetize them again in a traditional way. But if you, for example, create one platform with VW, Daimler will say, oh, why should I join this? Or BMW. So you have that problem that in theory, it all makes perfect sense. But how do you get that disruption in there? Like, how can those, like Joseph said, how do those big legacy companies can actually innovate? That they would need to disrupt so much to switch to that Web3 business model or like completely transform it, that it takes so long and no one is really doing that jump. And it takes a lot of time. And for us, like, we feel like the right government backing and funding is coming now, and we get better, like from a Web3 perspective, on figuring out how do we can incentivize everyone and get that disruption going. But I think a few years ago, everyone in theory saw it makes perfect sense, but really disrupting how things work fundamentally, that's what's the real challenge and what takes so much time.
Yeah, this is where entrepreneurship is needed again, just as Josef said. So what do you think, Sebastian? What is your perspective on that? Would you completely agree, or do you think there are other things that we could do to also speed that up a little bit?
I mean, I think it goes pretty fast in the disruption of the traditional finance ecosystem. If you have a digital version of money that is safe and it's running on the blockchain and it can go in light speed from A to B around the world, that's scary disruptive for any banker, any banks and any central banks. I mean, that's why, you know, they try to fight it, because in the end, most of today's financial industry could run on blockchain and smart contracts. that are much more fair and transparent, and you cannot manipulate them. So whenever, for example, in the blockchain space, you heard about a lot of default of players in the space. There were centralized companies, venture-backed companies. One guy made a decision whom to lend money, how to leverage product, and so forth. So they all went bust. Every decentralized, pure blockchain smart contract that was deployed was super safe. So I think it's crazy what's happening, especially in the emerging markets in Africa. What's happening in El Salvador? It's already disrupting. Western Union is totally disrupted. Nobody needs to send money going to Western Union, paying 20% remittance. They send money from their wallet, their e-wallet. You download an app, you put your digital currency, stable coins in it, and you have it in a minute, and you don't pay anything. You pay zero fees. That's very disruptive. What Leo is working on, he's already in the next phase. The disruption, the Amazon, how Amazon disrupted the bookstores is happening to the traditional finance industry, and it's super fast right now. And you have even seen states adapting to allowing Bitcoin to be a legal tender, a currency people can pay, forcing even Starbucks and McDonald's to accept Bitcoins and stuff like that. It's happening everywhere, and the disruption, the tipping point will happen when the traditional banking system will totally default, because what's going on right now, we have a super high inflation, we have the dollar goes crazy. At some point when the oil is not paid in dollar, the dollar will default, and then I believe a lot of money will switch to the blockchain, and that will be disruption, and that will happen maybe in 2-3 years latest.
Okay, so in short, the disruption is already there. Maybe we
it's
don't
underlying,
see it,
yes.
but in the established industries, it will of course take longer, as always. Also here with this technology, and maybe even more, even longer, because it's a complicated technology. It's not easy. There are not many talents out there, also. So how do you see this problem?
I mean, this is a good point. It's a tech-driven industry. I mean, it's beautiful that people have developed this nice piece of code and software, can turn it into a token and get money by selling this token. That's quite unique for tech guys. So tech guys are super happy, right? They go on GitHub, they get grants, they don't speak to venture capital anymore. It's totally, I mean, they don't need funding from traditional sources anymore, and they develop it and so forth. So that's a tech-driven part. But we definitely need, for the next wave, to have real use cases. We need more entrepreneur talents. But again, maybe you can tell a little bit more how you got into this ecosystem. Is it an age thing? You have to have the right. I'm really, trying hard to get into this ecosystem. I mean, it's really a lot of work. It doesn't come naturally to me, so I have to really make a lot of contacts. I met Leo. I'm super happy. I know at least one guy. I know more about it. But it's really lacking entrepreneur talent. It's a big problem, and we have a big opportunity if we get the best talent wherever we are to Germany and leverage it. Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, Leonard, maybe we learn from your stories. So how did you dive into this technology, and how you made the decision to found your company?
Yeah, that was actually, I was lucky. I was going to Berlin and I wanted to become a tech entrepreneur. And then an old friend of mine introduced me to Ethereum back in end of 2016. And I fell down that rabbit hole. So I was just fascinated by the possibility that you could run applications in a decentralized way without any central company hosting or controlling that. And yeah, I have to say, I just went down that rabbit hole and never looked back, kind of. So consider myself lucky. But then, of course, there were many very hard times on the way. So the scars Joseph was talking about, I feel that, and we had to build up a lot of resilience to push through. But yeah, it was totally worth it, and yeah, super happy. And then, of course, also the Berlin ecosystem, which was very early on, very strong, like the Web3 ecosystem. I think Berlin is a city who kind of attracts also people who think different and who want to disrupt and be a bit alternative about how to do things. But yeah, on the entrepreneur part, I fully agree. Like for quite some time, we thought, okay, we need to attract developers to build on our network. But then we realized after some time quickly, no, we need to attract entrepreneurs, because entrepreneurs solve the problems. They then get developers to build the thing, to write the code, but the entrepreneur is the one who's doing what's necessary every day to push through and get things going. So yeah, I fully agree with that. And I think as well there's tremendous opportunity for entrepreneurs to enter that space and to find those disruptive business models. And then of course timing is very important. You never know exactly when it's right, but it feels like big disruption is happening. And if you're in that space and move long enough, then yeah, good things will happen.
Maybe talking about making it more concrete and having more examples also, because yeah, of course we tell everyone you have to go into the space, but what can we do there? And you know that we're running our Livable City Sprint at the moment, so maybe we look at the Livable City and the city of tomorrow. You do already work on solutions there, but what are the other options that maybe you already have in your head for your business and you just have to bring them forward?
Yeah, that fits perfectly, because what we focus a lot on is kind of sharing economy also on the network. For example, one use case that will happen at some point is that everyone who has a vehicle can offer that for car sharing. Of course, that comes with a lot of legal issues and so on, but right now car sharing is a few companies, often daughter companies of big OEMs, are actually building up massive fleets, building a platform, and then you can rent such a car. But what if we enable everyone who has a car to share that whenever they don't need it? And of course there are great challenges ahead, but that's a perfect blockchain use case where you can do that then peer-to-peer to make mobility more efficient in the city. Or what if anyone who has a parking spot can rent it out peer-to-peer, register it easily? So all the parking spots in the entire city are registered in one system and are available to everyone. And because there are some big parking apps around the world, but they are again like central platforms, they are closed. And as a private individual, I don't want to pay maybe every month to register my parking spot. So if you can do that open on an open system, then we could have much more efficient parking in a city. Those are just two use cases that come to mind that, like a Web3 based startup could solve, or problems that could be solved to create a more livable city.
And I see a very strong connection also to the topic that we have today, to the topic of sustainability, because of course if you make that more efficient, then in a way it's also more sustainable. And having this decentralized idea of sharing your assets, of course, is also feeding the idea of having a more sustainable world. But I think there are more use cases. I mean, what are the use cases that guide us towards more sustainability that maybe can only be enabled by the blockchain? Is there something that comes to your mind, Sebastian?
I mean, the beauty of the Web3 space is the possibility to incentivize people to do the right thing. So what is the right thing? It's something we all agree on. For example, let's have a clean city, okay? I'm just making something up to give you an idea, and then you can develop a lot of use cases. On the blockchain, we can create a contract. We can agree what a clean city is, who picks up the garbage, what kind of garbage we use, and so forth. We can set all rules. Everything we actually always claim, wouldn't it be great if our kids would have X, Y, Z? We put it all in a contract, in a governance, in like the way we would love to live in the city, or at home in our family, to make it smaller. And usually, in order to do this in today's life, you need a government you need a police who make sure to enforce the rules. You have bad actors, you need to punish them, you need to make it secure. I mean, you have to do a lot of administration back end in this current world. On the blockchain, you have a contract and it's not changeable unless, of course, you have a governance and you can vote and make it, optimize it if it doesn't work. And everyone follows these rules, and everyone is incentivized to follow those rules. In fact, it's a thought of a really fair, almost communistic society. And I know that communism failed, it's totalitarian, but the idea to have an even, a fair way, everybody contributes something to somebody, everybody gets something. You don't even need taxes anymore. You would have a city coin, and if we all work together and we have access money, it will be distributed by everyone. I mean, this is like super. I'm going into an utopian notion to give you an idea what's possible. It won't go like that way, but it has opportunities that you set up organization like Greenpeace, and people who make a demonstration get some tokens, and if it's successful, they get more tokens. Some people invest in the tokens, so they have liquidity to pay the people who pick up garbage or whatever. I mean, you can do all these kind of gigantic incentivized structures, and it's on the blockchain. It's a smart contract, and it's direct and without any administration. So and it's measurable. So that's the beauty of it. And where it's done, it's in the financial. So if I lend you money and we agree on 2%, you give me 2% back. If you don't, then you don't get the money. And it's a simple contract. I don't need a bank for that. And you can have a lot of agreements. And I think it could essentially change government.
Yeah, in future. I don't have. Good, great. Maybe in future. So yeah, it sounds like a vision still, unfortunately. So, but yeah, it's a wonderful vision, because for me, then regulation is not needed anymore. So it's really setting the rules in a very decentralized way, and this is what it's all about, right? So. Talking about sustainability and BRYCK, also you working, thank you, working with the blockchain a lot. You know that there is this one topic raised very often, that the blockchain, of course, uses a lot of energy, and very often this energy comes from fossil fuels. So how do you solve this problem? And I mean, is it correct, this fact?
Yeah, so this is one thing that comes up a lot. And actually, I mean, there's the Bitcoin blockchain that takes a lot of energy because it uses proof of work, so that is true. But almost all other blockchain networks, and even Ethereum is switching right now to what's called proof of stake, which is very energy. Yeah, it's not heavy on the energy consumption. So almost all other networks besides blockchain actually are quite good when it comes to the amount of energy they need. So it's kind of a bias that got established because of the high energy consumption of Bitcoin. But yeah, like there are lots of solutions to that problem already. And the overall Web3 space is not heavy in energy consumption in terms of for what it does, because when we look at the central financial system, it also takes a lot of energy to do all of those transactions. So if we compare it, it's totally fine if not using proof of work. So yeah, Bitcoin is energy intense and heavy, and that's not ideal, but people are working on using renewable energy to power the Bitcoin blockchain. So hopefully this is happening more and more. But that the space overall is bad for climate change, I would disagree with. And actually, it has a lot of potential as well, because one sustainability use case is that in the future, energy will be much more decentralized. Everyone or every house will be able to produce energy and sell it into the grid and buy it from the grid with solar panels and so on. Electric vehicles will be able to buy and sell energy into the grid. And all of this will happen via blockchain transactions. And then you'll be able to also have green certificates that prove that that energy is renewable and all of this. And you need this highly efficient, cheap transaction infrastructure to facilitate that. So it will help greatly to transition towards a more decentralized and green energy grid overall.
Okay, Before we look at the questions from the audience, I want to raise another topic that we already discussed a little bit, which is we have all those opportunities, all those chances, but where are the people who really know how to use them? And where are the talents in this area? And you said, okay, in Berlin, I meet all of those people, wonderful. But what are we going to do here? And you know, we as BRYCK, we have this mission, we want to inspire and we also want to support. So maybe from your experience, you have both now, an ecosystem builder and the Web3. What do you think? How could we drive this change forward?
Yeah, the beauty of this industry is you become an expert in a year. I mean, you learn, you need to continuously learn, but if you enter the space, you do your learning, you meet people, you get involve yourself, you come quickly up to speed. So it's a personal decision. It's not too late, and it's changing so fast, so whenever you enter is a good point. When you fall in the rabbit hole, I mean, you know, I keep falling I'm still falling. 6 years ago, I also was lucky that I was involved in a blockchain company and they taught me about blockchain. That's even 7 years ago now, and I'm learning every day, and it's exciting to learn, and you really see you're part of the next evolution. And so if I would have the choice of starting a company, I would definitely first look, is it something I can build on the blockchain and leveraging the Web3 ecosystem? If it makes sense, I would go that way. That doesn't fit to all businesses. You don't necessarily need to just claim it a blockchain to get some venture capital or greenwash it. I mean, that's not, but I think there's lots of opportunity. The space is very generous, very sharing, very helpful. Everyone educates each other. That's what I'm saying. You know, it's not. It's try it out. I mean, go to the next conferences in this space. I mean, there's so much material online to learn about it. And first, you hear a few words like proof of stake and work and consensus and permissionless and all the slang words. But after a while, once you got them and you understand what they mean, then it's totally easy and suddenly it opens up a great perspective. But it needs entrepreneurs to build something. And I think it's to just give you an idea. One blockchain at NearCon, they have a budget of 800 million euro just to give to founders, developers, people who want to build stuff. Okay, and the way you apply, you go on a Google Doc, put your name, your reason, and hit send, and then most likely you get approved, unless it's totally crazy. Obviously, you need to show some case how you use their blockchain. But that's the way how you raise funding in this space. It's quite amazing. So it's super democratic. A lot of people who did not have access to finance before, programmers who don't know venture capitalists, can now build and develop. So I think that's also a very democratizing part of the overall ecosystem.
Okay, so everything sounds very, very easy if you tell us about it. On the other hand, I think it's also a question of knowledge. I mean, I wouldn't have known about all those opportunities, Sebastian. So it's great that you're here. But also you, Leonard, you have your own perspective on what would you need or what you have needed when you started your business in the blockchain, maybe.
Yeah, so absolutely being in Berlin definitely helped. Having lots of meetups and the spirit and meeting people. But the beauty is also that community is on the internet, right? Web3 happens on the internet. There are all kinds of community places and so-called Discord servers. There are lots of online events. So you can be anywhere in the world and you can be part of the community. And then there are always conferences in certain cities and then lots of people come there and then you can network. So you can perfectly fine build a Web3 startup from here. There is no problem and you can connect with all the people online. And then exactly, like having good funding programs, it's getting grants and so on is possible, but you still need to know what you do and describe it, and it will take time to get there. But there's tremendous opportunity, right? Like these ecosystems, they really want to build, they have a lot of money and they want to build an ecosystem, so there's a lot of funding to get. And yeah, for us it was actually having access early on to people who could help us. I mean, 2017 was very different to now. Now there's much more support. There's much more funding available. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so you are both staying with us a little bit after this panel, so maybe you just use the opportunity of networking and ask you directly for more suggestions, because you are one of the experts that you had when you started your company. Wonderful. Thank you. So I'm looking at slide.do, and we have 9 questions here, and let's start with the one with the most votes, which is one talking about the Bitcoin a little bit. Let's try to answer that, which is companies like BlackRock are holding huge amount of Bitcoin and can actively manipulate the price by selling and buying. How is this still decentralized? Okay, you want to answer, Leonard?
Yeah, so for sure, like in the space, even if you look at the miners, right, there are few big miners who are like kind of controlling, I think it's 7 entities who together could change the Bitcoin blockchain and could control it, but that then they would harm themselves because they would lose all the value they are creating. So there are ways, there's still some centralization involved for sure. And like if you have a lot of capital, you can buy lots of Bitcoins and then manipulate the market, that's true. But it is already much, much more decentralized than it was before. And for me, it's always, it's a process, right? It doesn't go from here's the complete centralized system to full decentralization. But Bitcoin is already much better. It's the most distributed asset in the entire world. You can send value from Australia to Canada in a few minutes. Lots of value, doesn't matter how much it is, can be billions. So and you really control your funds. So yeah, of course, bad actors still have an impact, have an influence, but it's not like the Fed, which can just print another $1 trillion and yeah, create massive inflation, which in the end impacts everyone. So yeah, it's not perfect yet. There's a way to go, but it's already much better. That would be my answer.
Wonderful, thank you. And I think that's sufficient. We have another question for you, which is, what is the exact business model of BRYCK? Maybe you can make that short, but very clear.
Yes, that's a very good question, because exactly how are those companies earning money? So the BRYCK network overall creates revenue, but not us getting that as a company, but the overall network revenue, which is also then used to incentivize all the stakeholders like that are building in the ecosystem. And yeah, so the company which is building the BRYCK network, it's called EOT Labs, continuously develops the network further and also gets some of those revenues when it is performing services. So there's a treasury, but ultimately it is about creating that open decentralized ecosystem where everyone who is performing services on the network is getting something in return. So we don't have that ultimately traditional business model where we are the middleman, and we're building things and tools on top that they then can also be used for against a certain fee, as an example. Then of course the company is holding BRYCK tokens as well. So if the BRYCK network becomes, like when it becomes more valuable, right, the token rises in value, and that also creates more value for the company. But yeah, ultimately it's about creating that decentralized ecosystem where we as a company, also as individuals, we are contributing, we have a stake, we also have tokens, and then we're also getting parts of the rewards. So it's, but it's a whole different discussion, basically, how to create sustainable business models in Web3. And I'm happy to, yeah, like we can chat about that a bit more afterwards, because it also took time for us to figure out, and it's not straightforward.
Thank you for sharing that. Very, very important discussion. I tend to ask you now, but no, we won't go into that. Maybe really for the networking. And I will start the next question, which came in from Luis. And he asked us, so how can we drive larger corporate adoption of Web3 technologies? We touched that a little bit already. And which industry area gets disrupted first? Maybe Sebastian, want to take that?
Yeah, as I said, the financial industry will be disrupted or impacted the most. And what was the question?
How can we drive larger corporate adoption of Web3 technologies?
Yeah, it's I think once we create clear use cases, for example, for logistic company to do financial clearance in various currencies, make their life easier. I mean, if they really can see that they save money and be more efficient and also comply to the ESG goals they have set from themselves, then they start looking at it. I mean, a few, they still experimenting and trying it out. I'm sure your consortium, they don't have a clear business idea, but they think something is going to happen. We take part. That's for the smart corporations, and those are the easy ones. And the others, you convince them when they actually have a traditional business impact. They can get better results or save cost. But it needs, in fact, it needs to, I mean, one idea would be actually to take a bunch of entrepreneurs understanding the technology, going into the energy field, looking at certain processes and then come up with ideas. I spoke to one team and they had an unfair advantage because they did a consulting job at a company and they learned about the problems and then they came up with a solution. So we would need to build it together with the industry. I think that's important. It's something at BRYCK we could do.
Yeah, absolutely. Is it something you're setting up in Lisbon as well?
Lisbon doesn't have so much industry. We would need to build a bridge because you have the talents in some places, you have tech. It's a very remote thing, but if we would find a way to bring them to companies, let's say in Germany, for discovery, that would work very well. I think that would be amazing, I guess.
So this is our vision now, building the bridge between Essen and Lisbon on the one hand, also using both ecosystems and maybe not Berlin this time, because we really want to bring also this ecosystem
and
here
corporates
forward.
love their retreats in Lisbon, so that's
True.
Perfect.
True, okay, so that's in the end the biggest reason for doing it. Thank you. So another question comes from Erdin. He says, is there a Web3 solution to store sensitive data, patient data, in accordance with the German data security standard? Very, very concrete questions. Can one of you answer that? Both.
I mean, it's a beautiful case for blockchain. I think in Estonia it's already happening since, I think, 8 years already. We were fortunate the president of Estonia came visit us a long time and he talked about how he implemented blockchain in order for the health system. So all the data is registered on the blockchain. The data is owned by the people in their wallet, and they can decide with whom they want to share it. So that's like the Krankenkassenkarte or whatever we have been discussing for years. Suddenly fair, and it doesn't belong to anyone. It belongs to you personally. That's a beautiful, very, very beautiful use case. Think about, you have in your wallet all your medical details from all your visits to the doctor, and you can press a button and share it, and it goes to the person, but I don't know how technically it works if it's then gone, but it's definitely, it belongs to you and not to the insurance company.
Yeah, to make it very concrete for the person asking, so the solution is already existing in Estonia?
Yeah, in Estonia they did it, but I mean there's a couple of companies I've met, they already have a e-wallet, like an e-wallet for medical data. It exists. I've seen 3 cases, a lot of people developing in that space already. Even Roche, a team out of Roche is working on that. Okay.
Here we have the industry being active. Okay, Leonard, you want to add something to that?
Yeah, just quickly maybe that there are like some projects working on storing the data, like you store it on your devices locally and then you can share it as well. So it's not stored somewhere on central servers, and it really belongs to you and you own it. But there are also ways to store data decentralized in a very secure way, and you basically have a key that enables you to encrypt that data and no one else can read it. So there are solutions going on, and yeah, it's great. There are a few projects like Ocean Protocol to look into, or IPFS, which is decentralized data storage for Erwin.
Great. Thank you for mentioning those concrete tips, because I think this is exactly what we need. And I found another question which I like, which is, will there be a realistic competition between Web 2 and Web 3? It's a big question, I know. For example, renting apartment via Airbnb versus via Web 3 solutions.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Facebook and things like this will be disrupted. And you see this, you can, the Dropbox has a counterpart in Web3 that belongs to everyone. The domain name registration is a decentralized service that's growing. All the platforms will be disrupted when people can, participate in the value chain. When I upload a picture, I get a token and some benefit, and not they take my picture and make advertising revenue, and Mark Zuckerberg gets rich. I mean, it's so compelling, the value proposition. Right now, it's not enough liquidity and let's say traction on those platforms, but it's growing fast. The Brave browser, it's a web browser that's actually decentralized, and it's having already 60 million downloads and installation. So at some point, it might flip the Chrome browser. You don't know. That will happen.
Yeah, I also think that what Sebastian said, that just the incentives are so superior. Like, you can incentivize everyone to, and that's where the disruption will come from. So it will be much more lucrative for users to use the decentralized alternatives. But usability, performance, we still have a way to go. But yeah, it will happen for sure.
Wonderful. So because we're coming to an end, I found a wonderful last question here in the tool, which is, if you have one magic wish to bring Web3 to the next level, what would you wish? And you both have to answer, because that's a wonderful last question for our panel today.
Okay, here is a wish. I would I wish for more entrepreneurs to enter this space, and I wish for all institutions opening their doors and asking the entrepreneurs to help them change their business model. So, going into a company and say, hey, listen, what could be done better using blockchain technologies? I mean, it's an openness for innovation and the drive from more entrepreneurs actually taking these technical challenges.
Thank you.
Yeah, like I fully agree with that. Maybe to add on, yeah, like that the user experience of using Web3 and usability increases super quickly, because that's the biggest blocker, right? Like, we are used to how Web 2 things work, and that is getting, like, it all works technically, but it often takes a long time. And then if you do it properly, you need to manage your own keys, and then you have some hardware ledgers, and it's still the threshold to get in and use it is very high. And yeah, if we can solve that quickly, then it will help to have all those wonderful use cases being adopted faster.
Therefore, we need entrepreneurs and designers and usability experts, and because it's true. I mean, there's brilliant technical products, but even the MetaMask is horrible. I mean, you download your tokens, and next morning you see no tokens, and then if you don't find your token, click here. I'm like, yeah, I mean, it's shocking.
It's the internet like 25 years ago, I would say, or maybe longer ago. So yeah. So I would say on the BRYCK side, we would also say mission accepted. So our wish is that we really can bring this ecosystem one step forward towards more uptake of the technology, because we have this mission of building a livable future, and I heard so many opportunities for a livable future with blockchain technologies in Web3. I think this will be also our next mission to bring that forward. Thank you very much for joining me here on the panel. Everyone here, I think we are happy that you're still staying a little bit. So now we really come to the time for networking and having drinks. I heard that already, wonderful. We also have some food for all of you. And we also, I think, have some music. I have to stand up and see if it's already prepared. Yes, so wonderful. Just as last time, we have our musician Julian Adler with us, who will play some wonderful and nice music for our networking now. And I want to thank you for being here with us tonight. Officially, there is some networking now, and I also want to thank everyone in the stream that you joined us. I hope you're inspired now for more entrepreneurship, because this was actually our goal. Thank you very much for being here.